Reporting on what the mainstream media won't, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the Global Star Radio Network.
Well, you found us, folks. The Hagman and Hagman Report for today. 3 hours of incredible programming coming your way. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for being part of our extended family. Thank you for your support, your prayers. Much needed. Let me tell you, much needed prayers. We've got so much to get into tonight. As usual, whereas, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the headlines would change every day. Now they're changing every hour, every half hour, every 15 minutes, quarter hour, every minute. It seems like we've got new information coming to you, coming to us. We're being just bombarded by information. Folks, this is the Hagman and Hagman Report. Joe Hagman, my son, fellow investigator, researcher, me at the helm, together, something I like to call America's premier father-son investigative reporting team, hitting it hard, coming into your homes, coming into your cars, right here on the Global Star Radio Network. That's the Global Star Radio Network. It's the place to be, the place to find people like Ted Broer, Dave Hodges. My goodness. Others as well. So many others. Welcome to this episode. You're not going to be disappointed. We may have a surprise for you in hour 2. Hour 2.5. Don't know. Got a call earlier. Joe, you were there.
Got the bat phone.
The bat phone rang.
Just in case it rings again.
Yeah,
and it'd be.
Well, I'm actually. We've got the bat phone. We've got the flashing red light. You guys can't see that. The studio audience can. Yeah. And anyway,
can we throw my dying cell phone in there?
Eric's looking around saying, well, "What studio audience? Where'd they come from?" Anyway. Eric the Tech at the helm in the Star Trek seat, and us behind the coal-like microphones. Glad to be with you. All right, I'm going to start this out today with I just want to point something out with respect to an article. Folks, HagmanReport.com. Hagman and Hagman. By the way, Hagman and Hagman is show information. HagmanandHagman.com. That's HagmanandHagman.com. Show information. HagmanReport.com. Show prep. Okay. Let me direct your attention to HagmanReport.com. Go ahead. We'll wait. No, we won't. On HagmanReport.com, of course, we have a 3-minute video by Coach Dave Dobmeyer, America's coach. Make this go viral. All right, he Coach. I think I got to send him a new pair of shoes because and a new set of tires. The guy is like all over the place in terms of he's making a difference, but truer words never spoken in 3 minutes. Coach Dave Dobmeyer. Folks, go to HagmanandHagman.com and click on the YouTube video there, or I'm sorry, HagmanReport.com and click on the YouTube there. Where Coach Dave Dobmeyer is at the Tiller murder house. Oh, I'm sorry, abortion clinic. Oh, I'm sorry, murder house. Well, the blood trail. The blood trail is there. But before that, and folks, support Coach Dave Dobmeyer. Support his efforts. Keep him in your prayers. He is in the line of fire, sometimes literally. One of the best pieces of writing, I think, the most prescient. That's the word of the day. What do you think, Joe? We have to have the word of the day.
Prescient.
For those people those people in Hattiesburg, prescient mean, well, you know what? I'm not going to, you can look it up. Judy McLeod from Canada Free Press, and this is my comments on HagmannReport.com referring to this article. Best words to describe our times. Go away, Satan. Go away, Satan. All right. Now,
it sure would solve just about all of our.
Well, you know something? I mean,
it would solve most of the problems.
This might be Judy McLeod week or Canada Free Press week because, first of all, she's a good friend of the program, good friend of mine. I've had the pleasure of spending a night. In fact, she put me up overnight at her home about 7-8 years ago. And when I was coming back from a business meeting in Toronto, and the hospitality, she showed me great hospitality, and we talked about Canada Free Press. We talked about so much. I spent I think 18 hours. I think we spent 18 hours straight just talking about events, and that was back in 05, I think 06. I don't recall. But here she writes, best word to describe our times, go away, Satan. Now, I'm going to paraphrase from her article because this, again, this prescient, this is timely. This strikes at the center, in my view. And Joe, I know you agree, and Eric was saying, yeah, I agree. This really strikes at the heart of what's going on here. The words that best describe our times uttered by Father Jacques Hamal as he lay dying with his throat slit in France, Normandy. Go away, Satan. You know, the mainstream media, the corporate media, these imbeciles in skin suits, these intellectual, moronic, spiritually bankrupt people who report to you the news. They don't report the news. Did you know, of course, and we talked about this, Joe, you and I did, we talked about this, where the murder of the French priest during Mass, what you may not know, the two Muslim, or the Muslim terrorist, the one Muslim terrorist that slit the throat of Father Jacques Hamal, smiled at the elderly nuns, both before and after taking this man's life, and made one of the parishioners in the church videotape the killing. And then afterwards stood up on the altar, replacing the priest, and gave a sermon, short, in Arabic. And of course, the imposter in chief, the renegade, Barack Hussein Obama, doesn't have the intellectual honesty, Joe, to call, to put the words
is it
Islamic terrorism
intellectual
together.
Honesty, or is it protecting?
Well, I think it's
their belief
I think
system.
you're right. I think you're more right than I am. You know, we told you, and this is not to our audience. This is to the people who tune in. And this is to the people who are taking notes or transcribing this show. You know, by the way, you transcribe the words to the show. Why don't you give us a call? We could pay you for transcripts because you're already doing it. You might as well make a little money on the side, right? You're just doing it for different purposes. And you know who I'm talking about. And yes, there are people that do that for cause. But Judy McLeod from Canada Free Press said, go away, Satan, and take the pack of squealing hyenas that are your demons who roam throughout the world seeking the ruin of souls. Folks, what we're seeing today, and Judy McLeod said it, Steve Quayle has been saying it, Pastor David Langford has been saying it, all of the Christian luminaries have been saying it. This is a fight in the spiritual, manifesting in the physical. We have to understand this. And, it took me a while. It took me the longest time. In fact, it took me Joe, and I'll give him the credit, my son, to explain it to me during many frustrating rides, I'm sure, to and from various cities doing our work. But payback is, what, because he put all this gray hair on my head anyway, as a child. As my wife said so readily today. He was a bad kid.
I cannot deny that. He was
one of the worst. She doesn't just say he was a bad kid. She said he was one of the worst kids I've ever had to deal with. And I said, "You're right. You were."
I know. Like I said, I will not argue with that.
I'm telling you.
But here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. So look, go to HagmannReport.com or better yet, go to CanadaFreePress.com and look up Judy McLeod's article. Read it, please. Spread it throughout the social media. Here you have a mainstream, I say mainstream, a mainstream news outlet known as Canada Free Press, acknowledging the fact that we are engaged in a spiritual battle. And do you know what? And here's something that I found very interesting. I watched the progression of this article. Now, there's many people out there that might not know this. Joe knows this, Eric knows this, others know this within the organization. For example, when there's an article, we'll say, that appears on Canada Free Press, there are military, police, and intelligence agencies who have mailing lists. For example, I'm not going to name them, okay? I'm just not going to do that because there's no need to. But consider this. You've got both private and governmental agencies who actually harvest articles, and they send it to the subscribers. So, for example, because of our investigative status as investigators, we are invited to join mailing lists that are of investigative and intelligence. They're on the investigative and intelligence venues, within these venues. Now, they obtain information from open source as well as governmental memos. So there could be for official use only, FOUO, classification document that doesn't make it to the public realm that we talk about. Okay, for example, we'll talk about this, maybe not addressing the memo, but addressing the topic. And sometimes there's a corresponding public document, open source document. You follow me? So sometimes there's not. If there's a threat that, for example, that to the transit system to the metro, we'll say in D.C., it may appear, for example, on the intelligence mailing list, but not appear in open source. Depending on the level of the threat, we'll talk about it. Depending on what it is, we'll talk about it. But what happens is on the open source side of both on the open source side of military, the investigative, police, intelligence, all of this, they select the people, the heads of the mailing list will select different articles. Not one touched Judy's article, and the reason is they refuse to acknowledge the supernatural component to the war, the battle in which we are engaged. This is why I often say, please spread this far and wide. Because if they don't do it, if they refuse to acknowledge God, Jesus, the good versus evil, to me, it's a hollow point. And I'm not talking about the ammunition. But Judy writes that Satan is in every terrorist who slaughters every man, woman, and child. It is Satan who covets caliphate, and it is Satan's Sharia. It is Satan who sees to it that Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, the imposter, the fraud, gets to protect the scourge of Islamic terrorism by defiantly refusing to name it. As you said, Joe, it is not, as I depicted it, intellectual dishonesty, but a protection practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Crowned only this week, she writes, by a pope who would say he doesn't like speaking about Islamic violence because there's plenty of Christian violence as well. Well, let me ask you something. Show me where the Christian violence is over the last decade. Crickets. Ain't there. It is Muslim terrorism. We are at war with Islam, and it doesn't stop there. Islam has been weaponized by the globalists for use in the Hegelian dialectic. Now, I'm moving from this article that Judy wrote, Best Words to Describe Our Times Go Away, Satan. Please, ladies and gentlemen, it's linked off of HagmannReport.com, but go right to the source, CanadaFreePress.com. Click on the article, share it on the Facebook. This is a critical article to understand, a critical article to share, and even more so, when you comment on that article, the censorship by Google, by ads, by all of these censors become less and less, okay, by algorithms. So the more comments, the more activity, the more it's shared, the more it's clicked on, the more it's read, the greater the penetration of the message. That's why we promote these. It's not for any other reason. It's not for, we gotta, no, it's to get the message out and to overcome, to fight, to meet the censors on their own terms. So please do that. But in addition to that, and then we're going to move on here, but in addition to that, again, Best Words to Describe Our Times Go Away, Satan, CanadaFreePress.com, Judy McLeod, top, make a comment, spread it around, do whatever you have to do, but indeed understand that really is at the epicenter of what we're talking about. Now, Breitbart, really quick, Joe, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this before the show. Breitbart had made one of the articles, or one of the news reports on Breitbart in the latest issue of its English language magazine, Dabiq, Dabiq. ISIS calls on Christians to abandon Christianity, arguing that Jesus himself was, and I quote, a slave to Allah who will wage jihad upon returning to earth. Now, you talk about the most obscene, blasphemous piece of garbage, and I'm referencing the magazine Dabiq. And I'm referencing every Muslim who adheres to the philosophy that, I guess that's every Muslim. I don't know. But here's what, this is so important, because this strikes at the crux of what we're seeing today. This is what Tom Horn and Chris Putnam talk about. This is really the subject, or one of the big subjects, of Chris Horn and Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's latest book about the Islamic Antichrist and the final Roman Emperor. Their book. The 15th issue of the magazine, called Break the Cross, is dedicated to convincing Christians that Jesus was a prophet of Allah. Okay. Now, again, please know that the magazine Dabiq it's the official magazine of ISIS, but here's why. Not only is the name important, Dabiq, the article itself, Break the Cross, and attacking Christianity is important, because here's what's taking place. And you can find this in Tom Horn's materials and Chris Putnam's materials in Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's book. I guess I could start right here. ISIS was under the leadership of al-Baghdadi. ISIS is really under the leadership of a number of people. ISIS is a creation of Western intelligence. We all know that. ISIS is worldwide now. ISIS has penetrated the United States. There are over 1,000, actually closer to 2,000 active investigations in the United States right as I sit here and speak. Close to 2,000 active investigations by federal and state authorities against members of ISIS in the United States. 60% involve individuals that have come across the southern border permitted by not just Obama, not just Holder and Lynch, but by the Republicans as well.
Did you see today a Metro Transit officer in D.C.
Mr.
was
Young,
arrested with trying to aid ISIS?
Yes.
And
there's a whole string of these.
I also read in the comment section of an article about somebody who witnessed in a neighborhood kids playing.
Yes.
One dressed up as an Arab with the hijab on.
No,
like an 8 or 9 year old playing like you used to play in your front yard, rolling around in the grass and playing cowboys and Indians, whatever it is. But it looked like, from the point of the commenter, like they were playing, police and terrorists.
Or Muslims and non-Muslims, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into that, Tom Horn, Chris Putnam talk about Dabiq. And one thing that is not being recognized in the press, by the media, Islamic eschatology from the Hadith. Now,
well, does Donald Trump have anything to do with it?
No.
Well, you won't see it then.
Well,
I mean, every network is so busy trying to destroy Donald Trump, for the way he breathes and the way he combs his hair and
that's
the
right.
side of bed he gets out of in the morning, that they have no time to cover actual news.
It's interesting you say that, because I'll divert just for a moment here from our mail. Now, don't hit any buttons, but from our mailbag, folks, I have a wonderful, and we'll get to this later. I have this wonderful, absolutely stunning piece of mail from Karen in Rome. I want to tip my hat to Karen in Rome. Look, Karen, it's late, early where you're at. I just want to say thank you so much. She's been a friend of the program forever. But it is, when I read this, everything just fit together. Karen, you're a wonderful lady. But back to Dabiq, Syria, or the Dabiq, the magazine, folks. In Islamic eschatology from the Hadith, Dabiq is not just merely the name of the ISIS magazine. Dabiq refers to a city in Syria, Dabiq, Syria. It is it is really one of the focal points of Armageddon in both Islamic eschatology and in the studies of Christian eschatology, end of times studies as well. Dabiq, of course, the Romans, or Roman Christians as some scholars have put it, will land in Dabiq, wage war against the Muslim soldiers. The Muslims will win, and the last hour heralds the arrival of Isa, or Christ. Notice the word Christ, not Jesus, but Christ, and Dajjal, the Antichrist. Now, again, it's so important for everyone to understand that the official magazine of ISIS is called Dabiq. Folks, Dabiq, Syria, is the epicenter, according to the Hadith and Islamic eschatology, where Muslims will be fired upon, wage war against the Romans or Christians, and prevail, thus bringing in the Antichrist and Christ. Again, in the Islamic eschatology. The reason this is important, figuring into this, not just the Dabiq, but also figuring in here, is Istanbul, which is formerly Constantinople, and Rome. We saw an attack against the priest in Normandy, which is an attack against Rome. The Dabiq is first, Rome is second. We've got a lot more to get into on the other side. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, newly revamped, coming at you from all directions.
Yeah. Up next, we're going to have a chance from American Survival Wholesale. He's going to come on and talk about all things water, water storage, water preparation, water treatment in times of emergency and disaster. And
get your pens out, get your papers out, take notes. These are preparation classes, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Are they not?
Yes, they are. Very much so. Chance from American Survival Wholesale. Up next, right after this.